Carol Beatty. I am your first year programs liaison officer, and in collaboration with the wonderful faculty and staff here at Victoria College, I coordinate our first year programs, including the Vic One program. So before we get started today, although we are not currently meeting on campus, we do want to acknowledge the sacred land on which the University of Toronto and Victoria University operate. So I'm just going to share my screen for that acknowledgement, particularly because today is National Indigenous Peoples Day in Canada. So we acknowledge the sacred land on which the University of Toronto and Victoria University operate. It has been a site of human activity for 15,000 years. This land is the territory of the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. The territory was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy and Confederacy of the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Today, the meeting place of Toronto is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to live, work, and study in the community on this territory. We are also mindful of broken covenants and the need to strive to make right with all of our relations. So thank you again for joining us. We're really excited that you could be with us for this session. During the session today, we're going to be giving you some information about course selection and academic planning, as well as just talking about some of the unique features of the Vic One program and how it will fit into your first year schedule. We'll also have time to do a bit of a Q&A as well. And then at around 11 o'clock, we're going to put you into smaller breakout rooms with the other students from your stream, so you can have a chance to meet your fellow Vic One students and talk to your Vic One mentors. So to start things off, I'm going to hand things over to Professor Ira Wells, the Director of Academic Programs at Victoria College and one of our instructors in the Fry stream. So Professor Wells, please go ahead.
Thanks, Carol. Welcome, everyone. A very special welcome to, to Vic One, to the University of Toronto, to a new chapter of your life. I am over here at Robarts Library, which is why I'm wearing the mask. And it's a place that I assume that many of you will get to know very well over your time here. It's one of Canada's biggest libraries and with one of our most impressive collections. It's also a really great space to study, and I would encourage you all to check it out. I have just 3 pieces of advice that I would leave you with this morning as part of my welcome to Vic One. The first is that right now, many of your professors, myself included, are very much thinking about what we want our courses to do next year. We're not sort of satisfied with doing the same thing over and over again. Some of us, tinker with the syllabus, change the texts. Some of us really bring the courses right down to the studs and rebuild them every year because we want the courses to really work for our students. We understand that there's no such thing as a perfect course. There's no such thing as like the platonic ideal of a course that we get it just right and then we do it again and again and again. We change things up because our students change. And this is about creating courses that are going to connect with you. Now, my advice for you is to really give yourself the time to appreciate the readings. Don't just sort of burn through them and treat them as perfunctory. We really have put a lot of thought and a lot of effort into coming up with material that we think will connect with you, that will be meaningful to you, that will be an important part of your education. And it's important, but it's the ball is then sort of in your court in the sense that it's important for you to try to engage with that material to the best degree that you can, and to really create space in your day and in your week to engage with that material. So I would just really encourage you to, as you're thinking about what the fall looks like, to program some quiet time for yourself, to program some time where you can just find a quiet space on campus with your books, with your texts, with your laptop, and really engage with what your professors have come up with. My second piece of advice is to take the time to enjoy each other. One of the really amazing things about Vic One is that as you'll soon discover, is that there's something about having everyone in the same space who shares a certain sort of nexus of interests. And the way that I was putting this with a student I was chatting with over the weekend is that, I was obsessed with English when I was in high school, but there was maybe only 2 or 3 other English people who were in my classroom. And so it felt sort of dead, even though like I was interested in the material, not very many others were. And there's something that happens in Vic One where you all of a sudden you have like 25 people who are all interested in the same thing, and the energy just kind of snowballs. And so it does, I think, lead to a special atmosphere and a kind of special ambiance in the room. And I would also just really encourage you to bring that out of the room too, to forge connections with your students, go for a cup of coffee, hang out in the quad, get to know each other, because I really do believe that there is something very special about the groups of people that form in this community. And so, you may be tempted to, if you were a little bit on the shy side, as I was, to just sort of say you'll see them later and go back to your res room or whatnot. But I would just encourage you to try to get out of your comfort zone and forge those connections. They will be very meaningful, and you'll be glad that you did. The last piece of advice, and I am taking this from our outgoing president, William Robbins, who gave his last commencement address to 4th-year graduating students last week. Practice compassion toward yourself. And what I mean by that is, every education, every student there will be ups and downs, there will be ebbs and flows. Things won't always go exactly right. There'll be assignments where maybe you thought you nailed it and it turned out that you didn't, there in those moments where, you're not getting the feedback you wanted, or you're not feeling like it's going as well as you'd like it to. Just remember that this is not any given assignment or any given moment, any given essay or test is not a verdict on who you are as a person, and it's not a verdict on how you're going to do in school either. These kind of ebbs and flows, these dips, they're very much just sort of built into the process, and I think that everyone will understand that no one, as much as people pretend to just experience nothing but success all the time, that is not the reality. And so I would just, really encourage you to practice compassion toward yourself as you make your way through your first year. So that's it. Those are my three pieces of advice. Enjoy your courses, enjoy each other, practice compassion toward yourself. I very much look forward to meeting you in the fall, and I'm grateful to have this opportunity just to chat with you for a few minutes today. So enjoy the rest of the summer, enjoy the rest of this session, and I look forward to meeting you in person in the fall.
Thank you so much, Professor Wells, for those, wise words to take into the year and, kind of the back of our heads. So next we're going to be hearing from Tom Mackay with some information about course selection and academic planning. Tom is the Manager of Student Success and Academic Advising at the Office of the Registrar and Academic Advising here at Victoria College. And so just as a note, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat as we go, and then we'll have some time to take up those questions later in this session. So Tom, I'm going to hand things over to you.
Thank you so much, Carol. I just want to check and make sure if my screen is indeed sort of sharing. It looks like I'm getting some good vibes, so that's great. Thank you so much, everyone. And welcome to Vic and to Vic One. I am delighted to chat with you today. I'm going to not take a tremendous amount of time on enrollment stuff because there's a lot of depth you can go into, understanding terminology and such. My focus here is a kind of a bird's eye view of the planning process in first year with a particular lens on what it means when you're in Vic One and you have some courses that are already that you're already planning on taking will be enrolled in, as well as co-requisites to Vic One, and how you work out the real estate of your first year courses and plan it given that in mind and such. But let's start a little bit with also mentioning some of the other sorts of steps that are coming up. And that includes really me advertising other information sessions that will come up, because this is just one of many that are available to you, and one of many media means that you can get connections with. So please know that all of you have been connected to Quarkus course. Quarkus is our course platform at U of T, and it's a course called Vic 101 Pathway to Undergrad, and a lot of resources are there, including some from recent Open Vic sessions and more to come, including links to other sessions that are coming up, as well as links to the calendar and timetable and other tools and such. So it's a really good resource, and it's constantly updated with updated information that sort of is timed to the different tasks that you have to do in the summer. So it's a very it's also a good way to kind of get in the rhythm of what June, July, and August will feel like as you head into first year. But about those sessions, let me just emphasize there are drop-in sessions with my colleague Sarah here, who leads and is our point person for all the transition programming we do. You all have e-mentors who are a great resource, but there are also special sessions where we're invited as a guest to chat a bit about the practicalities. And we will have other sort of special registrar's office information sessions a little bit later on through June and July. And finally, there's our email address, and we'll make sure we share it a few times in case you need to have specific questions that relate to course enrollment and course planning and such, and you want to connect with our office. Let's just talk a little bit about that timeline too, just again to sort of situate ourselves in sort of the timeline leading into the fall. You're in the planning stage right now. June is a time when people have made their choices for the most part about where they want to go and have started to hear back about some of the aspects of the courses they want to do. And so, this is your time to sort of browse, consider, throw out multiple different scenarios and plans based on things that you're interested in, and discover things that might be something you didn't expect, but you may want to throw into your courses into first year. July 4th is the next big date, because that's the day where you go onto Acorn. And if you don't know Acorn, I'll touch on it a bit later, but Acorn is your main tool web page where you sign in and do things like enroll in courses, check your financial balance, check your academic history, and all these other things. But Acorn is where you enroll in courses. And on July 4th, when you go in, you'll be able to see your start time. All first year students start their priority period on July 21st, which is the next date, but they're all assigned different times of the day when it's their turn to start. And that's important because for things like some of the courses you want to get in, and you want to get into the section that you have worked out in your own schedule, it's important that you be there on your time, Toronto time. So if you're another part of the world, adjust to time zone difference and such, and use that to check into the courses that you need the most. July 29th is another important day in enrollment. It's what's called the general enrollment period. All the courses earlier in July, when you enroll in them, that many of them have priority controls. That means certain students can enroll then, but other students have to wait. And the waiting date is July 29th, when basically all courses open up more freely for availability for students. That may not affect you too much, but there may be some, depending on your stream, that you may not have priority access to in the early part, but you can on July 29th. And finally, August 31st, it's the time you have to pay the fees or defer your fees to actually get yourself registered. That's what locks you in to your courses that you selected earlier. Also want to at least flag some of the other events that are being put on by upper year students and our colleagues at the Office of the Dean. Orientation. Check out, it's got a very simple website, vicorientation.com, and there's several coming up through August and into September, including those for students who are commuting and international students. So be sure to check that out. Now, to start the question about planning, I've now got this enormous and busy looking slide in front of you, but don't panic. I'm going to break it down a little bit. This is a table that's used sometimes to break down what it takes to get a degree. And you can see there are two sort of degrees that are talked about here. Broadly speaking, the Honors Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science, which have certain criteria, and the Bachelor of Commerce, which is very similar in many ways and such. But there's some slight differences, which you can see. The reason why I'm pointing this out is because what happens in first year is you're setting up your courses in some respect, thinking ahead to the next 3 years. That includes things like thinking about what are the programs I might want to explore and make part of my degree. What are the other sorts of explorations I want to do and things like this. So I highlight this just to emphasize that there's a broad framework, what it takes to get a degree that is kind of your 4-year plan. I emphasize that it's not necessarily 4 years. Students sometimes take 5 and stuff like this. The time and pace for you to get your degree is your own and such. But there's 20 credits, and there are full and half courses. A full course is 1 credit, a half course is a half credit. But there are 20 credits you need to get your degree. So first thing about your planning is that you're probably going to be aiming, at least to start, at 5 credits this coming up fall, winter. The next important thing is that most of these will be introductory courses, or in the case of Vic One, the special sort of seminar-like options that Vic One gives you. But the other thing you'll be doing is laying the foundations. You're starting to think, what are the programs that might be part of my degree? And what do I need to take in first year to make those available to me moving in to second year? I will also touch base on something that is required for all degrees, which is the breadth requirement, which is there at the bottom. But I'll come back to that in a bit, because it's not something you necessarily have to factor into first year, but some students do as a way to start to tick a few more degree requirement boxes. So as I say, first step is thinking about your programs and therefore what are the needed courses you're going to have. Now, just to emphasize, no student actually joins a program of study until they're officially a second year student. And it's when you've achieved 4 credits that you become a second year student. So this year for incoming new students is basically a pre-program year. You are setting the groundwork for what you will try to join after first year. By the way, students sometimes change their programs after second year or even after third year. These things are not set in stone. People constantly make discoveries, even after first year, about the things they like or things that maybe they thought would be one thing, but turned out to be something else, but they discovered something new. That is a normal process. And this is a great faculty to be part of, because there's so much to choose from and so much you can fall in love with and give you options to create the degree that you want. But what I would advise to start with, of course, is to start to narrow down the programs that inspire you and they're interesting to you. You may have picked your stream in part based on programs that you're already interested in, and you may have picked out, therefore, streams that connect to co-requisites that you might be taking anyway and such, and that's fine. But you may not have done that. You may have picked a Vic One stream that appeals to your interest, but your programs may be diverse, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But the academic calendar is one of your key tools at this point. It is kind of the reference manual for the Faculty of Arts and Science. It has all the rules and regulations, all the courses, and all the programs, including what you need to do to get into a program. And that's what you're interested in. If you look in the program sections of the calendar, you can look at something called enrollment requirements, which tells you if there's very specific requirements of first year courses to get into it after first year. You'll find that there are open programs where there's no specific requirement. You just have to be in second year and then you can join the program. Or you'll find limited programs, which might be looking for specific courses, maybe with specific grades in those courses, possibly even a slightly competitive average if it's a difficult program to get into. They may look at baseline marks in some courses, but also calculate an average between those courses to sort of rank you in terms of getting into the limited space in those programs and such. And all that is available in the calendar. But no matter what, whether it's a limited or open program, what you will find out is what are the first year courses they expect me to take. Either they're specific introductory courses or they might be broad courses. And that helps you start to narrow that down. And as you check multiple programs, you'll start to come up with a family of courses that seem to be the ones that you need to open the doors you want as you go into second year. Do check out, again, our resources on the Quirkus course, Vic 101. It will help you a little bit in seeing some of these options as well. And we go into more depth. We had some presentations this past Saturday, and if you weren't able to come to us in person for OpenVic, you can get even more depth there. So now let's come to thinking about it in terms of the real estate of your first year. In other words, 5 credits to play with. What are you going to do with them? So I would first of all emphasize that 5 credits, so that's like 10 half courses or 5 full courses or some combination thereof, should be your starting point for most cases. I emphasize specifically, don't go over that. This will be your first year at U of T, in the sense of pace and workload will be something you're discovering for the first time. So it's not just that 5 is sort of the typical mathematically sort of appropriate sort of, number of credits because it's 1/4 of 20, but it's also considered a standard course load. But standard means different things to different people. So even as you go through your first year, you may discover different needs in terms of workload yourself. But in terms of planning, start with 5, unless you know you're going to be part-time or something like that, or have other sort of accommodations you need, which means you need to reduce your course load. But within that 5, how do we chop things up? Well, we know that Vic One is the third bullet there is 2 credits. So there's some of your real estate there right now. You also have co-requisites that were required. Sometimes it can be as low as a half course, or it can be a full credit and such like this. And that may, to some extent, overlap with actually your programs of interest, where we typically suggest to students that they can go for 2 to 3 credits, depending on the programs they're interested in. So between Vic One and the courses you pick to open your programs, that's probably most of the real estate that you've got, potentially, depending on the combination of programs that interest you. But if there is still space, and there often is, we encourage students in first year to take this time to explore, to find out new courses that maybe aren't ones they plan to pursue, but they never got to take it before, so they want to do it. It could be a language, it could be an exploration of culture, it could be, if you're a more humanities student, it could be an elective in the sciences that's attuned to the non-scientist and such like this. Similarly, in that space, sometimes this is where students may sometimes look and say, is there a breadth requirement I can try to tick the box for in my first year, setting up more flexibility for me later on? Now, one question that does come up for Vic One, not exclusively, but not that uncommonly, is that you may be in Vic One and you may have a co-requisite with Vic One, and that's very cool. But your actual programs you're interested in are somewhat different in that way, in which case you suddenly have a bit of a challenge with the real estate, because you have possibly, not the 2 credits for Vic One plus the co-requisites, but the rest of the space is what you have to put into programs. Now, remember that not all programs need that many credits, so it's quite possible you can make it all fit together as long as you strategize what are the key courses you need for your other programs that tie with the programs you want to go into, and still leave space enough for Vic One and such like that. But if you're starting to run into challenges, know that you can talk about it. Students have had this problem before, and sometimes as a way to kind of focus on some strategies about what might be top priority courses in first year, but some might be able to be postponed. Sometimes you can talk to Carol here to talk a little bit about the challenges. She's seen many of these challenges prior, so she knows some of the techniques that's been used to try to figure out ways to sort of make it work. And of course, meeting with someone like me or Sarah or anyone in the academic advising office, or sort of the registrar's office, is a great place to go if you're just trying to make this work and you're not quite sure how to kind of pick and choose with such limited space. So don't worry if that happens. There are options, and we're happy to talk to you more about it, all of us, basically, in this call. Since I talked about the breadth requirements so much, I'm going to spend a little time just on it. But again, I want to emphasize one of the bullets down the page, which is that you don't actually have to do this in first year. The breadth requirement is something you have to complete over your 4 years before you graduate. But here's how it works. All courses basically are categorized as to 1 of 5 breadth requirement sort of categories. You can see them listed there. Number 1 starts with creative and cultural representations, all the way down to number 5, which is the physical and mathematical universes. You might guess, and probably guess correctly, that roughly speaking, these categories typically fall in certain areas that might be more humanities versus social science, but not always absolutely. For example, number 2, there thought and belief and behavior, you get philosophy, but you also get psychology, which are very different in terms of overall discipline, but nevertheless focus thematically in the same area. But your job before you graduate is that you have to have on record having completed at least 1 credit in 4 of those categories, leaving the other one blank, or 1 credit in 3 of them and a half credit in the other 2. That sounds like a lot, but remember, or maybe I should emphasize, right now, all courses count towards this. So breadth requirement is often started very much by the courses you pick in first year and your disciplinary programs. So for example, if you're interested in life sciences, you're probably going to get category 4 and 5 taken care of just by doing your programs, in which case breadth requirement for you may be about trying to pick out something from 1, 2, or 3 to round it out over your 4 years and such. And if you're very interdisciplinary, it might be possible that the programs you end up in take your breadth requirements and solve them just instantly. If you happen to be one of those people who wants to do, I don't know, biology and fine art history, or you never know, you might just take a whole bunch of these right there. Let me just emphasize, though, that when I say all courses have breadth requirement categories, that includes Vic One courses. So that's a thing to eyeball as well. This is just a sample, of course, of 4 of the many streams. But just to give you an example, when I look at something like the Chambers stream, just by doing the Chambers stream, you've got 3 of the 5 categories done and such, even before you go into second year. So in that sort of instance, you can imagine that student would really, especially if they continue in the more social sciencey sort of vein, which is often category 3, might just have to end up doing a bit more in sort of 4 and 5. But actually, if you take an economics 101, 102, you may well be taking math, in which case category 5 will also be taken care of as well. As you can see, the Vic One sort of courses often give you multiple categories in first year. So it sets things off really quite well, looking at these options here. And again, this is just a sample. So remember, if you want to think about breadth requirements, also examine what you've already going to get from your Vic One courses, and also examine what you're going to get automatically with the programs that interest you. That's been a quick summary. And I emphasize it's been quick because we all want opportunities for you to get to know each other and to ask questions. And so this is really, again, more about the terrain and the map, but not necessarily the intricacies of the journey itself. Things like course enrollment, timetabling and such like this is maybe some of the questions we can come up with, but there's lots of resources on that and more sessions to come. But I hope that gives you at least a bird's eye view of how to think of it in terms of a plan and a journey. And I hope that in your first year, will you not only get the extraordinary sense of discovery and connection with other students and scholars that you get from Vic One, but that you will also dabble a little bit in the other courses in arts and science too, to make a first year really memorable and really exciting in terms of what you get. I'll pause there, or stop even, and we'll see what kinds of questions come up. And I'll stop sharing so I can actually see the chat.
I think we had one question in the chat, Tom, that I answered a little bit, but it would be great if you could speak more about it. About if you joined a first-year learning community, if you're doing a FLIC, which is 2 courses, would you then only have 1 course for your intended program? So if you maybe want to just talk about how FLICs and the program requirements interact.
Thank you so much. And what a great question. FLICs are a great community opportunity. There are multiple different FLICs that are tied to very specific sort of communities of students that have courses in common. One of the earliest FLICs, and I'll use it as an example, is a life science FLIC, which there are many, including one that's hosted here at Vic. What the FLIC does is basically, it looks at a cluster of courses that students have in common and will pre-enroll you in those and also set you up with every other week or so as sort of an opportunity to meet outside of class, to connect on study skills, to connect with other students, and to meet people, including your mentors, to guide you through first year. Nothing about FLIC necessarily changes the overall strategy. When you join a FLIC, it's because there are specific courses in it that are represented, that are the ones you're thinking you're going to take anyway. So what it presents, though, is essentially 2 blocks. You have a Vic One block, if you like, and FLIC creates a different sort of block of courses that they will pre-enroll you in. So you've got to sort of look and see how those 2 mesh. The good news is around FLIC that even though the FLIC communities tend to tell you, okay, if you're part of this community, we're going to pre-enroll you in bing, 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 and such like this, and these sections of that, you can change those sections. So for whatever reason you've joined a FLIC, but there's a schedule conflict with something like Vic One, there are ways to modify that as well to make sure you can make it all fit. And a lot of the FLIC courses are basically the clusters of courses. They're big courses, so they tend to have lots of sections, so you can try to alter those accordingly. So start by looking at the courses that the FLIC wants to put you in, look at your Vic One, and start to check that timetable up and see how it goes. Now, if you're also running out of space, if you have a FLIC that basically enrolls you in 3 credits and you've got Vic One that enrolls you in 2, that may be fine. But it might be that your FLIC is connecting to the courses you would be doing anyway. So that would probably still be, like I say, the same sort of schedule sort of challenge you might have had from the start. If you're part of a FLIC, but it plus Vic One plus the Vic One co-requisite is now adding up to a lot of courses, then that takes us to that question I had, or I talked about, which is, what do I do when I seem to be running out of room to do everything I want to do? In which case, it'll be a great opportunity to take your specific circumstance and reach out to either Carol, if you're trying to look at the Vic One sort of requirements and see if there's any room to maneuver there in terms of co-requisite, or come to me or Sarah or one of the team to talk through what the academic plan looks like. So in other words, yes, to bring it to Amanda, it's flicks tend to connect students to the courses they intend for programs anyway. So really, but to your point, the answer is yes. That leaves one space for one other course, which might be for another program you intend to get or for exploration and such.
Okay.
I've got
Yeah.
an ask here from direct message. We're going to put some of the dates from the first slide into the chat, and just in case, because it's zipped by. And this is going to be recorded as well, and these dates are also on the Quirkus site. But thank you to YY for asking me to sort of put those dates up again. They're very important, and I certainly don't want you to miss them.
So I see we still have some questions in the chat, but I think a lot of them are related to things that I'm going to cover in kind of my portion of our advising seminar today. So thank you so much, Tom, for all of that great information. And again, we will kind of circle back to any questions that we still have about the academic planning in generally. But I'm just now going to give you a little bit of, kind of more specific information about how Vic One will fit into your plan for your first year. So I'm just going to take a moment and share my screen. And yeah, you can continue to ask questions in the chat. I may not be able to answer them kind of as we go, but we will look at them afterwards. So just can everyone give me a thumbs up to let me know if you see my screen? Okay, great. So just as a quick overview of the kind of topics that I'm going to be covering, first of all, I'm just going to talk a little bit about like what exactly is Vic One and what the Vic One environment is like. And then I'm going to cover just a few important tips, related to what Tom has already said about when you're planning your schedule from first year, just including as well some information about how Vic One factors into your U of T degree. And finally, I'm going to be going over the required courses for each stream of Vic One. So really our first question is kind of, what is Vic One? And basically in a nutshell, it's an enriched and interdisciplinary academic program for first year students. And it's an opportunity to experience the benefits of a small classroom setting in your first year of university. As a Vic One student, you'll take your Vic One courses in a cohort with the same small group of students. So you have a built-in community starting right away. And I think Professor Wells was talking earlier as well about these are all people who are really, passionate and interested in the same topics that you're interested in. So it's a great way to kind of, bond and share that excitement about learning. The small classes in Vic One are also a really great opportunity to connect directly with your professors. They are all really passionate about teaching undergraduates, and they're dedicated to helping you succeed while you challenge yourself intellectually and explore new ideas. So as you probably know, there are 8 streams in Vic One, and each stream has a central focus that it uses as kind of a jumping off point to explore the interconnectivity between subjects and disciplines. So we have the Chamber stream for leadership, commerce, policy, and economics, the Education stream, which studies education and society, the Fry stream for literature and the humanities, the Gooch stream for philosophy and ethical citizenship, the Jewison stream for the creative arts and society, the Pearson stream, which studies history, politics, and social sciences, and the Shallow stream looks at physical and mathematical sciences. The Stowe-Gullen stream studies life sciences. So I've seen a few questions so quickly in the chat about switching streams. I would recommend at this point, email me at vic.one@utoronto.ca, and I'll put that email up on the screen later, and I'll put it in the chat as well later on, because it will depend on whether or not there is a space available in the stream that you're interested in. So just to tell you a little bit more about what the classes in Vic One are like, they are seminar-style discussion-based classes. And so that means that they're very participatory, and your instructors are really going to encourage you to kind of engage with and like grapple with the material. They really want to challenge you to dig deeper into the topics that you're studying. It's meant to complement the other classes that you're taking by giving you an opportunity to kind of look under the hood of those subjects. And it really encourages you to ask questions and consider new perspectives on a variety of disciplines. So I'm just going to move my slideshow along. To get into some of the details about how Vic One will fit into your schedule, there are a few important things to keep in mind, in addition to all the great information that Tom has already covered. So the Vic One office, we will enroll you in your courses for your Vic One stream by July 1st. So you'll already have those courses in your schedule when you're doing your timetable planning in July, and you do not need to worry about adding your Vic One courses to your schedule when you're doing your course registration on July 21st. So we will be enrolling you in your Vic One courses for you, and that will already be done by the time you're registering for your other courses. With that in mind, you are responsible for registering for the co-requisite courses for your specific stream, plus the other courses for first year that Tom mentioned. I will be going over the kind of individual specific requirements for each stream in a bit for the co-requisites, but for now, just keep in mind that you are responsible for choosing and registering in your co-requisite course. Another thing to keep in mind when you're planning your timetable for the year is that the Vic One plenary guest lectures take place on Wednesdays from 4 to 5 p.m. And the plenary lectures are a vital part of the Vic One experience. It's a chance for all of the students from Vic One, from every stream, to kind of come together and listen to an inspiring guest speaker, could be on a topic in politics or the creative arts or business or science. So this is a really important part of the Vic One experience. And you will be required to sign in and attend those lectures as part of the participation marks in your Vic One classes. So when you're planning your timetable for first year, you do have to make sure that you don't schedule anything that conflicts with the Vic One plenary. And we will also be adding it to your timetable on Rosie to make sure that you know to keep that time slot open. We will also be having meet and greets after the plenary lectures, which happen from 5 to 6 p.m. So those meet and greets are optional, but it is just a really amazing opportunity to chat with the plenary speakers and your fellow Vic One students and the mentors. So we do strongly recommend that you keep that time slot open as well. And finally, we also want you to keep in mind that Vic One students are ineligible for any other One program or for the Vic 100 courses. And this is just because we want to make sure that you're leaving enough room in your schedule to take those courses that will count towards your intended programs. And we also just want to make sure that as many students as possible are able to participate in those small class opportunities. And for those of you who are Victoria College students, so you have the Vic small class requirement, Vic One does fulfill that requirement. So you don't have to worry about adding another class to meet that requirement. Vic One will take care of it. So now just to give you a little more information, kind of covering again some of what Tom talked about how Vic One fits into your overall degree at U of T. And Vic One classes, we definitely want to make sure that we make this clear. They are courses that count as credits towards your U of T degree. So they go on your transcript as U of T courses, they're included in your GPA, and as Tom was mentioning earlier, they count towards your breadth requirements. And to earn a degree at U of T, as we already kind of talked about, you need to complete at least 20 credits, and you'll also hear those referred to as full course equivalents, or FCEs for short. And this is just a sample breakdown that, this is what your degree would look like if you were doing 5 credits or FCEs per year for 4 years. Again, just a kind of sample template because it's pretty common. This is not a requirement to do 5 courses per year for 4 years. You could do a longer degree, and that's totally okay, but this is just our sample template. So in the first year, your Vic One courses are worth 2 credits. And depending on your Vic One stream, your courses might be 2 full year courses, which run from September to April, or they could be 4 half-year courses, which run from either September to December or January to April. But your Vic One courses, so the courses in your Vic One program, will still total up to 2 FCEs overall. And in addition to the Vic One courses, you have the co-requisite requirement. So I think we had a question in the chat about this earlier. So the co-requisite requirement is kind of in addition to your Vic One courses. It's a separate course outside of Vic One in another department that's related to the material you'll be studying in your Vic One courses. And I've seen this question a couple of times as well. If you have any transfer credits from, advanced placement or IB courses, you can use those credits to fulfill the co-requisite requirement. So we will look at transfer credits when we're looking at the co-requisite requirement for your, overall satisfaction of the Vic One requirements. If you are worried, as Tom was saying, just that you're running out of space, that in combination with the program requirements for your intended majors, plus the Vic One courses, you're not going to have room in your schedule for the co-requisite requirement, definitely please email me at vic.one@utoronto.ca, and we can kind of go over that and determine, what can we do? Can we be flexible to figure out a way to make sure that we can either count another course towards your co-requisite requirement, or in some cases, we're even able to waive the co-requisite requirement altogether. And then, as Tom covered, these are your remaining courses in your first year. They could be other courses for your intended programs, or they could be additional elective courses that you're taking to cover your other breadth requirements. So just to look at a little more detail about what these schedules look like for each of the Vic One streams. The Chamber stream is designed for students who are interested in commerce and management, but it also explores topics like economics, public policy, and theories of leadership and policy analysis. And the Chamber stream consists of 4 half-year courses. So they are Vic 186H, the Art and Literature of Leadership 1, Vic 187H, Prosperity, Justice, and Sustainability, Vic 188H, Corporate Citizenship, Sustainability, and Ethics, and Vic 189H, the Art and Literature of Leadership 2. And so your co-requisite for the Chamber stream is 1 full credit in first year courses in economics. If you're a commerce student, this is already part of your required courses for first year anyway. So for our next stream is the education stream. This stream is geared towards students who are interested in teaching or education-related professions and explores the philosophical, economic, historical, and cultural aspect of education and the profession of teaching. In this stream, you'll take 2 full-year courses, and they are Vic 150Y, School and Society, and Vic 151Y, Theories and Practices of Teaching. Your co-requisite is Psychology 100H or Sociology 100H. I saw a question in the chat about this earlier. If you are choosing Psychology 100H, we recommend that you take it in the S term. Oops, sorry about that. Just because usually we have heard that, students have given us the feedback that they have just found it to be kind of easier to adjust to taking the course in January. So because you've already kind of, gotten your feet wet in the university environment, you are more adjusted to working at the university level. So generally the feedback we've heard is people prefer to take Psychology 100 in January, but that's not mandatory. And as part of the education stream, students also complete a practicum component where you work with a teacher in a Toronto school or a community organization, and you get direct experience in interacting with learners. So the Fry stream is designed for students who are interested in the humanities, and it covers a multidisciplinary investigation of literary, philosophical, and cultural influences throughout these fields. And there are 4 half courses in the Fry stream. They are Vic 162H, Cultural Forms and Their Meanings, Vic 163H, People and Ideas, Vic 164H, Literary and Artistic Realms of the Imagination, and Vic 165H, Isolation and Communion in Modern Culture. And the Fry stream is also split up into 2 sections. So if you're in the Fry Red section, you'll be taking 162 and 165 in the fall term and 163 and 164 in the winter term. Whereas if you're in the Fry Yellow section, it will be reversed. So you would take 163 and 164 in the fall term and 162 and 165 in the winter term. Either way, you're always taking 2 Vic 1 classes per term. And for the Fry stream prerequisite, you will need to take 1 full credit in either English, philosophy, or art history. So the Gooch stream is for students who are interested in philosophy and ethics. And this deals with questions of ethical citizenship, social justice, and the age-old quest for truth and goodness. The Gooch stream also has 4 half courses. So they are Vic 166H, Common Vices and Neglected Virtues, an Intro to Ethics of Character. Vic 167H, Ideas and Fine Thoughts, Vic 168H, Identity and Equality in the Public Sphere, and Vic 169H, Ethical Living in a Pluralistic World. And your co-requisite for the Gooch stream is 1 full credit in either anthropology, philosophy, or religion. So the Jewison stream deals, that's the Pearson stream. Back to the Jewison stream. This stream deals with the arts and society, and it looks at literature, poetry, music, visual arts, cinema, and the intersection of kind of all of these art forms with historical and social issues. And there are 2 full year courses in the Jewison stream. So they are Vic 190Y, the arts and society, and Vic 191Y, artistic creation and public issues. And you have a lot of choice when it comes to your co-requisite for the Jewism stream. You take a full course in either architecture, cinema studies, drama, visual studies, music, or English. And now we're going on to the Pearson stream. So this stream is for students who are interested in history, political science, and international relations. And it studies current and historical events with a focus on ideas of sociocultural context and responsible citizenship. The Pearson stream has 4 half courses: Vic 181H, World Affairs; Vic 183H, Shaping Memory; Vic 184H, History, Historiography, and Making Cultural Memory; and Vic 185H, Social Justice. And like the Fry stream, the Pearson stream is split into 2 groups. So if you're in the Pearson Blue group, you'll be taking 184 and 185 in the fall, and 181 and 183 in the winter. While if you're in Pearson Green, you'll be taking 181 and 183 in the fall, and 184 and 185 in the winter. And the co-requisite for the Pearson stream is 1 full credit in either economics, history, or political science. I do just see a question in the chat that I'm going to answer right now. Can we integrate courses from different streams based on our interests other than those in our stream? You cannot take courses from a Vic One stream if you're in a different Vic One stream. So basically the Vic One stream courses are limited to the students in that stream because we really want to build a sense of the Vic One stream as a cohort for you. The courses are kind of designed to relate to each other. So it's not possible to kind of mix and match within the Vic One stream. If you are interested in a topic that's outside of your Vic One stream, you could find another course somewhere else in the university that relates to that topic, but you wouldn't be able to take a course from a different Vic One stream other than the one that you're registered in. And yes, the co-requisite for the Pearson stream is 1 full credit. Our shallow stream is for students who are interested in the sciences generally, and particularly in the mathematical and physical sciences. So this stream teaches fundamental analytical skills, and it also explores the role of science in society and the social responsibilities of scientists. And the shallow stream has 2 full year courses, and they are Vic 172Y, Physical Sciences Today, and Vic 173Y, the Philosophy of Science for Physical Sciences. And for your shallow co-requisite, you need to complete 1 full credit from first year science courses, and at least 1 half credit of that must be a course in either chemistry, physics, or mathematics. And yeah, I think someone had a question earlier about, does a full year class in math, like Math 137Y, would that fulfill the shallow co-requisite? And the answer is yes, it would. And last but not least, we have the Stowe-Gullen stream. And this is for students who are interested, again, in the sciences generally, but particularly for the life science students. So it prepares students to participate in the important debates of our time about the ethical, social, and political consequences of scientific advancement. And the Stowe-Gullen stream is also 2 full year courses. So Vic 170Y, the impact of science on our society, and Vic 171Y, methodology, theory, and practice in the natural sciences. And for the Stowe-Gullen co-requisite, you need to complete 1 full credit from first year science courses, and that has to include at least 1 half credit in biology. So I'm going to kind of go back through the questions now, and Tom, definitely please feel free if you see any questions for that you can answer from your registrarial perspective, please jump in. I know that both of us have really given you a lot of information to take in. So if you down the road you have other questions, we really encourage you to reach out to your college registrar, just for general questions about course enrollment and program selection. So if you're a Vic student, that would be Tom and Sarah and the wonderful team at our registrar's office. If you're in another college or faculty, it would be their registrar's office. And yeah, if you have any questions about Vic One or co-requisites, again, for the students who are wondering if it's possible to switch streams, this is, you can also contact me at vic.one@utoronto.ca. So I am just going to put that email address in the chat right now, so everybody has it, but they can just click on it.
While that's happening, there was a question earlier on I'm just going to jump to, which is, do Vic One courses count for our programs too? If so, can we find out which programs they count for? It's a very good question because it's very eclectic, but there are some examples where a program will actually use a Vic One credit to complete a program requirement. And even in some rare cases, it may even count towards actually getting into a program. But they're actually very eclectic and spread out and such. And that's because many of these sort of what I call sort of broad sort of seminar style classes, especially Vic One, are so focused on very particular sort of subject areas and really allowing that exploration that their applicability to different programs is sometimes tricky to find. So I'm going to share a couple of immediate sort of observations about this, and then tell you a little bit about how I found it out. But just to make a point here, if your stream that you've picked in terms of Vic One is really tied to your programs, then you may, in some cases, get this kind of advantage or opportunity that one of these core programs can come, but not all. But I would also be careful not to necessarily pick your programs based on these things being used, unless it's actually a program you wanted to do and such like this. But let me give you a couple of examples. One of the examples that I was actually looking up when I saw that and reminding myself of has to do with political science. Political science as a program is normally to get into that program. It's a limited program, so they look for grades. It's not competitive, but they look for minimum grades and first year credits. And to get into for something like the major in political science, it's the same for the specialist or the minor. They look for 1 credit of completed courses in first year related to political science. You can either do 2 of the half courses from political science's own intro courses. That's Political Science 101, 106, 107, 109, or you can take 1 of their half courses that's intro and make up the other half with other more sort of seminar style classes. And they give a long list, including some seminar classes. These are small class experiences that are taught by political science. There's some that connect to the Monk School Ones program, the Trinity One program. Some of our small Vic 100 classes, which are special seminar classes that Vic offers outside of Vic One. But then I can also see Vic 167, 168, 181, 183, 184, 185. So in fact, the courses from those streams, 1/2 course of those coupled with an intro course from political science and 1/2 course can get you entry into that program. And entry requirements, these courses also, of course, count to the program itself. That's just one example. A second example is actually sort of for some of the science programs. There are Vic One programs that can help count towards what is essentially a study of ethics that are connected to the science programs. Many science programs, in addition to the core content of these programs, also look for at least some credit in ethics to sort of give you some perspective on sort of the scientific endeavor and such like that. And a particular one that pops up a lot, let me just find it here again, and then I'll show you how I found it, is, I believe, Vic 170, let me just make sure I get it right here, is 172. And that's what part of the stream as well. You see it popping up in especially the physics programs, actually, maybe not entirely surprising there, as something that can count towards the ethical the ethics requirement that's part of that program of study itself. Now, here's the trick that I found out. Use this with caution, but if people, maybe I will see if I can sort of share my screen, because this is a trick in the calendar itself. Is that all right, everyone? All right, so let me just quickly sort of share here. Okay, so here I am in the arts and science calendar, and the link, just so you know, is artsci.utoronto.ca. Remember, this is your reference manual. All the courses and programs are here. What I actually go to is program search. Now, the search functions in the calendar.
Are you sharing?
Is it not working?
No.
Okay, hang on a second. Let me just try again. Let's try.
Hold
Can
on.
you see it now? Can you see it now? Perfect. Sorry, everyone. So the arts and science calendar and such has program searches. Now, these searches are fairly very simple, but what you do is in these search functions in the calendar is you put in a character string and you look for the occurrences of those characters in the text of the calendar and such. And so program search, if I put something in the keyword, just some characters, it immediately sort of checks all the descriptions of all the programs to find if those characters exist. So my technique actually for finding Vic One things is I just put VIC1 and then the next digit that relates to the streams that are interested in. So if, for example, you wanted to find out, if your stream happens to have Vic One courses to start with VIC 16, and you do it through the search, you see all the programs that connect to that somehow make reference to that. And then you can expand it to find out what the reference is. You want to make sure that you understand what it is. But here's the example in political science here, when I put in VIC 16 as a search term, because it shows up every time that exists. And here we see it in this, as I described it, one of the options for entry requirements for the political science major, 167, 168, 181, and such like this. I would find the same if I did VIC 18. If you're really excited, you just do VIC1, and you can get a variety of programs that somehow tie to courses that start VIC1. But be careful, because some of those may also be Vic 100 seminars as well. But that's just a little tip. I find that using the calendar, especially even to browse, you can sometimes find interesting connections and such by simply trying the search functions. And this, by the way, is just how I use it to find course references in different programs. You can use program searches to find all sorts of things, like just put in nouns and topics and see what pops up and such like that. Anyway, just a little side little tip on that, in case that's useful.
I mean, it's certainly useful to me. I won't speak for anyone else in the chat, but that's a great tip, Tom. Thank you. Yeah, and just very briefly, in terms of program requirements and the Vic One courses, some of the courses in the Jewison and the Fry stream can also be counted towards the Literature and Critical Theory course and the Creative Expression and Society course. I saw we had a question from William in the chat about when will we be getting more in-depth information like reading lists about our classes. Those will usually be coming out, I would say, in August, just because at this point, as like I think Professor Wells was mentioning earlier, the professors do like to reevaluate their courses every year. They want to determine, what worked, what didn't. Is there, material that they want to add that's going to kind of bring things more up to date to make sure that they're keeping their courses engaging with what's going on, generally in the world. So those syllabi are usually ready in August, and your professors will usually kind of email those out to you, at least for your Vic One courses. Your professors will usually contact you just with a welcome email to say these are the reading lists, and they'll let you know kind of what they want you to get started with, if anything. And just I'm going through the chat here. For the Jewison co-requisite, can you take 0 to 0.5 courses? Yes. For any co-requisite where we are requiring you to take 1 full credit equivalent, you can meet that requirement by taking 2 half courses, and they can even be in different areas. So for example, for Jewison, you could take 1 half course in architecture and 1 half course in English. That would be 1 full credit meeting your co-requisite requirement. Yeah, Shivangi, I saw your question about, the flick conflict. I think you've already emailed me about that. And yeah, for detailed questions like that, definitely, I think it's easiest if we kind of get into that over email. So yeah, anyone who has a kind of in-depth question about your schedule in terms of how it would interact with Vic One, often the best thing to do is just email me, because then we can have a really kind of like get into the nitty-gritty in a conversation. I see we have a question. Do we have to take a co-requisite each semester? So 1 full credit total, or can we take 1 half credit co-requisite? It depends on your stream. If the requirement for your stream is 1 FCE, you do have to take a total of 1 FCE. I think the only stream that has 1 half credit as a co-requisite is the education stream. But in terms of your co-requisites, taking them each semester, that would really be up to you. You could take 2 half credits in 1 semester that would meet your co-requisite, or you could take 1 in the fall semester, 1 in the winter semester. Can co-requisites be taken in the summer? We really strongly recommend that you take your co-requisite during the school year, just because the co-requisite requirement is intended to kind of inform what you're learning in your Vic One courses and give you kind of a knowledge base that you can draw on in those class discussions. So if you have a kind of additional question about that, I would recommend just emailing me to follow up.
Let me just add there that, as Carol has just mentioned, it's an important recommendation, because co-requisites are meant to be done learning in context with other things. So talking to Carol about any issues there is really important. Broadly speaking, I would say when you're reading the calendar as a whole, looking at other courses, you should note that co-requisites tend to be strictly enforced. But in the same way, just as a sort of general lesson about co-requisites, if you're looking at that for any kind of course now or in the future, and you're uncertain about it, reaching out to the department that runs the course that you're trying to take, or that has the co-requisites, is an important step to find out if there's any leniency. But these tend to be quite strictly enforced.
That's a really good point. Thank you, Tom. I'm definitely in my kind of Vic One tunnel vision about co-requisites, but yeah, it's really important to consider that they have a kind of a different, they're enforced differently outside of the Vic One program.